Jeans up at the same time, and then everyone would be up a creek. So I appreciate you taking that initiative.
Sure. They didn't seem to mind both going, so at least on my end.
Hi, Kurt. This is Aaron. I just joined.
Good afternoon, Aaron. Thanks for joining.
Hello.
Thanks for once again volunteering your conferencing system.
Looks like it's working too.
It's so far so good. I could have probably propagated my information, but since you so graciously offered yours, it was easier to cut and paste from one email to another.
And it looks like we are recording.
I have not hit the record button yet.
I see a little red flashing dot, and it says recording on my screen. So maybe because I'm on the organizer owner.
I see it too. I'm just yeah, and there was also a voice, like a canned voice message indicating that recording was starting.
Oh, excellent.
Okay. Great.
Must be a default setting with your account, Aaron.
Yeah, I made sure to set it up to auto record. So.
Okay, well, there you go. All right, and it's 4 minutes after, and we've got double digits, although not our usual 20, so we'll go ahead and get rolling today. So thanks everyone for joining the call and figuring out the new technology. We'll be using Zoom going forward. So you can remove all your old links to BlueJeans. Although as we just found out, BlueJeans is still working, Aaron, so maybe you want to close down your account.
Oh, yeah.
To make sure that is not being used for nefarious purposes. So welcome to Zoom. I guess my first question for those of you who have joined is that earlier this year when I was scheduling meetings, I basically scheduled them every 4 weeks. Which means that we had one today and one on November 29th, and nothing happening in December because it gets crazy that time of year. So do the people on the call want to go ahead with the meeting at the end of this month as well on the 29th? Is there anyone who doesn't want to meet in 4 weeks?
I will say that it's the same time as reInvent, and I'll be there, so maybe a few of us won't be able to attend.
Okay, that's true. I've got a staff member at reInvent, so they won't be able to attend there either. All right, a few more people trickling in. All right, well, I may send out a poll or something to try to get feedback from the group on their preferences on that front. Next up, just want to share with you, I'm going to try, I think it makes sense to change the way I'm scheduling meetings next calendar year. As I said, this year it had been every 4 weeks. And next calendar year, I am, unless someone objects vociferously, going to make sure that it's basically the same day every month. So basically it would be the third, I think the second or third Wednesday of the month, as opposed to being every 4 weeks, because then that starts to crawl into different months if you don't schedule it exactly right. I think
that sounds fine.
Yeah, I think that'll also be easier for people to remember as opposed to having it jump around to different dates. And another note, I will be sending out a welcome message to everyone on the email list. I apologize for those of you for whom it's noise, but I finally, as you might recall, was prompted by someone at the last UCCSC in-person meeting to create a welcome document to orient people as to the purposes of the user group, and then the coin still didn't drop. So about 5 months later, when I saw a message in my inbox that, hey, so and so had joined the user group mailing list, I thought to myself, well, maybe I should send them a copy of this welcome document. Wouldn't that be a nice thing to do? And lo and behold, well, since I did that the first time, there's been another 20 people signing up for the mailing list. So I think it's a good way to propagate information about the group. So I'm going to send it out to the entire list so that the 100 people that were before that who didn't get the message will get some of that information. So if you have no interest, it's fine for you to consider it spam and delete it immediately, if not sooner. Next up, I'd like to thank Walter Stokes, who was on the call. Yes, he is on the call. Is there, Walter?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I'd like to thank Walter Stokes from UC Berkeley for scheduling and actually convening the very first focus group, which talked about security a couple weeks ago. He's in the process of scheduling the follow-up meetings for the group that met to talk about that. So thank you very much for grabbing the reins there, Walter, and making that happen.
Absolutely, Kurt. Yeah, I'll be happy to give you a follow-up on that too later in the meeting if you want.
Well, you can jump in right now.
All right. Yeah, so it's for us, it was, everything was kind of hitting the fan because we really need to come up with a solution for PL2 data within Amazon. And so that's why I really kind of grabbed the reins and ran with it. So we've had conversations with UC San Diego. We had conversations with UC Irvine. Thank you, David, and Priya. If Priya's on, I know David's on. Where we were just trying to figure out some solutions that would provide intrusion detection, which is one of the main things that our security team, as well as the security team down at UC Irvine, want to see when we have protection level 2 data out there in the cloud. So that's one of the reasons why we spun that up. And yes, I need to do a follow-up meeting with that one. We wanted to have a follow-up meeting internally at Berkeley with the appropriate people before we had that larger follow-up meeting as well. Just to kind of hash over where we are at this point. We've also seen Kevin's architecture. We haven't gone into that in much detail, but we saw Kevin's architecture that was protecting research data that's out there. And we've also, just last Thursday, I was pointed towards a NIST compliant architecture that a gentleman who has just joined us here at Berkeley, who came from NASA, put together, and it's actually out on Amazon now. There's actually a quick start document out on Amazon for this architecture. So we were in a meeting this morning. See if I can actually put that on the. It's a NIST 853 standardized architecture on AWS cloud, and there's a quick start reference deployment that he pointed me to. And we're just starting to dive into the details around that one. So I can put that one out. I can put a link to that on the minutes here if you want. But that's where we're at this point. We're really having a lot of conversations around security in AWS and just trying to figure out a good architecture to go with. It's going to be sustainable as well as manageable and scalable going forward. And that's really where we're at this point.
All right, thanks for that update, Walter. And it sounds like since you now have that person on your campus, if he's willing, that would be maybe that's a great next meeting if he was willing to sort of do a presentation that corresponds to that architecture document that you're sharing, and we can tack Q&A session on the end of that.
That is an outstanding idea, and I'll work on getting that lined up.
Okay. Excellent news. So thank you very much for that. I will also share this from Carol Jordan, who couldn't join us today, but is here in spirit. She sent out a survey to get the focus group that was talking about billing, cost, and recharge. So she sent out a survey asking some questions about scheduling that and interest to everyone who had signed up for the focus group on the focus group document that's out on the Google Drive. So if you are interested in that and did not see a survey, then you can email myself directly, and I will put you in touch with Carol, so you can be included in the membership of the people who are going to be invited to that meeting. And we're also reaching out to the campus liaisons and trying to find people, because potentially people outside of the AWS user group play a role, especially with the recharge and budgeting portion of using AWS. So expect that to be happening in the not too distant future. Let me get back to my notes here. Okay, so that's the end of my administrative notes. Once again, let me check out the agenda. Once again, I believe okay.
Just doing some updates.
Okay, Walter's doing some updates on the agenda. We have no one signed up to present today. So basically, with those administrative items out of the way, I'm going to throw the floor open for anyone who is on the call to share some of their current AWS-related activities or air some of their AWS-related questions or make suggestions about the group or future presentations. And I have a topic for discussion, but I'll let others jump in first.
I'll start then. Shoot, this is Jason at UCSD.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty still in our infant stages with our AWS, our new AWS environment here at UCSD. We've barely got a few instances up, and we're still just trying to enable the logging at this point for CloudTrail, the VPC logs and so forth. We've got a few. I think we just set up 2 DCs in our AWS environment, and I know my sysadmins are dealing with some RPC issues when they try to access shares across sites, and our VPN tunnel's up. But that's where we're at right now. We just want to get the logging enabled and fine-tune our SCPs and whatnot. So
okay.
Pretty early.
Yeah, question about that. So are you piping the CloudTrail, CloudWatch logs into an existing log consolidation infrastructure, or are you just configuring them within are they staying within the AWS environment itself?
Right now, I'm looking at just doing it within the AWS environment. I'd like to pipe them in to somewhere external, and then we can view them via Splunk or some, whatever tools are available. But right now, I'm just trying to get it up and running. I mean, they're enabled, but I'm still having some trouble getting the logs actually configured. But more than likely, right now, it's going to be just basic AWS location.
Okay, and one of the reasons I bring that up is because we just purchased a license earlier this year for Splunk, and we actually had a professional services engagement last week here at the CDL, and so we now, I believe, and my team can chime in to confirm that, I believe that we have CloudWatch and CloudTrail messages entering into our Splunk environment now. So if you wanted to talk to someone who had actually done that, we'd be happy to make some time available to you and or your team.
I would love that, because right now we're using a little a demo license for our Splunk for the AWS. I would love to speak to and get one of my sysadmins here to join in on that on my end. I would, if we can set something up offline, I'd really appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. If you shoot me an email directly with your contact information and some dates or times that work for your team, then I can talk to my team and we'll try to set a call up.
Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Good.
All right. Yeah. Sometimes, one of the serendipitous situations where we just happen to have some experience that you're looking for, and likewise, when Walter was talking about the security, intrusion detection, et cetera, architectures that have been shared, makes a lot of sense to share that information earlier. Internally, rather than having everyone recreating the wheel and struggling on their own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Kurt?
Yes?
Kurt, this is Michael.
Yes, sir.
This is Michael with the CDL team. We were wondering, our team was wondering has anybody worked with auto scaling out in the field? Has anybody implemented it? And if they have, what was the use cases that they're using it for? Doesn't sound like anybody has. Okay, thank you.
So we're doing not using the Amazon auto scaling. We have some of our modeling and data processing that happens on EC2s for traffic stuff, where we're having our code do it through the EC2 API, but we're not actually using the auto scaling feature of AWS.
So when you say you're using it by code, you basically are using the API to create it and provision additional instances based
That's
on
right. And then reap them when they're meet certain conditions. You know, like they've been, yeah, they're gonna go in about to start another hour, but have been idle. Then okay, go away.
Mm-hmm. And the logic behind that, the reason why you took that approach as opposed to using auto scaling was.
And so I forget is the easy answer. It's stuff that my colleagues set up quite some on our architecture, but so apologies if.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
It might be worth a question, but my assumption is that they initially tried to use auto scaling, and it for whatever reason it didn't work with your use case, and so then they found a different approach to take.
I think it may have been how the software was getting deployed. I can't remember. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. I want to jump back to Jason. Thanks for introducing yourself and sharing that information. Can I bug you for a little more information about what group you're working with and what is driving you to your interest in the AWS environment and what kind of workloads you're planning on putting up there?
Yeah, sure. UCSD itself, one of the groups here had already established a small AWS infrastructure prior to our IT consolidation that happened last year. And now I believe we have directives from Harvard management on the vice chancellor level to start moving some of our shared services over to the cloud. Hence AWS, since we had already used, one group had already used them. One group on campus also uses it for some collective share services for their students, but the IT itself here for ITS, that was the main drive, was to get a lot of our core shared services pushed out to AWS, and it also frees up resources here at our data center as well.
All right, so you're looking for take advantage of some scalability, reliability, high availability type capabilities within the AWS environment. Mm-hmm. And when you say shared services, I think you mentioned before you had a couple of sound like domain controllers. So you're putting Windows domain controllers out there.
So far, right now, yeah.
Okay, and other shared other shared services would be things like what?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of some other services ITS provides. Some password tools. Our main UCSD Blink, our public-facing sites.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much of the student service would transfer over, but a lot of our business tools, maybe some of our the ones that are not required by that, the ones that don't directly open up from USOP, some employee sites, IT tools that we use to manage accounts and account services and whatnot. That's off the top of my head. That's what I can think of. I know there's a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
If I had one of my sysadmins here, they could probably answer more. But mainly a lot of things that we're hosting for staff, we're going to move to the cloud.
Okay, fair enough. And then you're going to basically then reuse your on-premise resources to things where you really need the local processing power and or lack of latency, or are you avoiding, do you know if you're avoiding the cost of a refresh cycle or all the above?
That's one of the things. I'll say all the above. What percentage of that, I couldn't tell you, but definitely all of the above.
Okay.
The refresh costs is definitely you know, a topic of pro AWS movement or migration. Yeah. You know, just like, you know, spinning up an instance is pretty fast too. So that always makes things a lot easier for our sysadmins to get up and going.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll put in a plug here to get on the AWS Slack channel under UC Tech as well.
Okay.
In particular, your tech team. So if they have specific questions, there's people across the system now that are on that channel that potentially can assist. And also, just like with your sort of reporting and Splunk questions, we don't see a lot of activity on the email list to date, asking technical questions or asking for assistance, but that's one of the purposes of having that list of people you can contact. So you or anyone else who is going into a new project could just fire off an email and say, like Michael McKenna did, hey, anybody out there have experience with using autoscaling, or does anybody have any experience setting up CloudTrail and CloudWatch logging into a existing Splunk infrastructure? Then hopefully there's somebody out there that has some information to share, and that's one of the ways to contact them. So again, hasn't been used a lot like that in the past, but I'm encouraging people to use more of that in the future.
Yeah.
To have even more conversations, so we're not just talking about these things once a month.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. Anyone else have a topic of conversation before I jump in? Find my notes here.
Hi, I have a quick question. I'm Cindy Lau from UCSF.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Slack channel on UC Tech. Is it Amazon Web Service, Amazon-Web-Services channel, or is it something else?
No, it is that channel.
Okay, I just want to be sure. Okay,
yep.
Great.
I'm pretty sure. I'll bring up my Slack here. Amazon-Web-Services. That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. And keep in mind that not everyone is a Slacker, so
Right.
don't be afraid to sort of dual post to both Slack and the email list.
Oh, the listserv. Okay.
Yeah, listserv if you need to.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to throw out this question for those of you from various locations, which is, how is your location / organization including cloud services, in particular AWS, but I guess it applies to any cloud services, into your governance framework? And do you have a dedicated steering group that's guiding your cloud initiatives, or is that really being driven, from the grassroots level without a lot of higher level oversight or planning? So those of you who represent different locations who have any insight into that, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts.
This is Jason at UCSD. Like I mentioned earlier, we're still in the early stages. Our department has established a new ITS Pro project group, which is now going to be heading up our AWS migration / infrastructure build. And other than that, that's all I could really tell you. They're the ones steering the project now. We started off as a small group, a couple of sysadmins here and a few security analysts like myself joining in, and now we're finally getting direct.
Thanks for that information, Jason. For for everyone else, in particular, I'm looking to see whether Jason seems to express it as they were given a mandate and they're going after it. The question whether they've generated some requirements for how you go about implementing that. Are there standards established there? Is there someone who's watching, across the campus what's happening with AWS, or is everything sort of catch as catch can still?
Yeah, it's pretty much catch as can. No, we haven't even established if we're going to let certain groups, make their own types of VPCs or anything like that yet. So we're still waiting for any type of governance ruling here. That's how early we are.
Okay.
How young we are.
Fair enough. Well, hopefully we can. Hopefully others can provide some guidance and make that path a little easier.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Walter, do you have any insight into how that's happening at Berkeley?
Sure. Yeah. I'm coming at it from a central IT perspective, and from that perspective, we really haven't gotten governance in terms of thou shalt move X amount of things out to the public cloud services at this point. Having said that, I will share an interesting anecdote, and that would be the fact that Larry, who's our CIO, was at a Pac-12 CIO conference a couple of weeks ago, and everyone got a full day's worth of presentations by different public cloud providers, and each one of those when Amazon stood up, they said, "We'd like to hear from you as to how many deployments you have up on Amazon." And it turns out that Berkeley has by and far the most, at 998 different contracts in place with Amazon. So that to me was an interesting data point, and a little bit of a scary one as well. So, but from a central IT perspective, there's no real mandate at this point to move anything, and it's really more grassroots level out there in the field.
So what does that number sort of mean? Is a contract sort of one sort of active PO, or what does that kind of count mean? It sounds like a big number, but I'm not sure.
Right, Greg, I don't know. That's one thing. That's a thread that I've been wanting to pull on since he mentioned it. Is it active? Maybe it's one active billing account. That's out there that's doing certain things. And with the decentralized nature of Berkeley, it makes sense because there's probably any number of different groups and departments that are out there actually doing things out there on Amazon. And this ties back into my security conversation from earlier, because I can't imagine that with that large of a number that there's not some sort of what we would call protection level 2 data that's actually out there on Amazon at this point. So that's where I'm trying to beat that one down at this point, but I don't have a clean answer for you on that one.
Yeah.
Well, and Walter, this is Aaron here at Berkeley. I might add to that. We just reached out to strategic sourcing here to ask who's using AWS or other cloud providers too in any form, whether it's directly billing it through an invoice or even getting reimbursed on a personal credit card. And I have data sitting waiting to be analyzed. And so that's something that we want to do here, to figure out what's happening in this space. And this sounds like it could be maybe a interesting working group topic amongst other UC folks. So if there's anybody else doing that kind of sleuthing, we're actively working on that in Research IT here at Berkeley.
That's great. That's exactly where I wanted to go with this. And it's funny because I literally wrote down on my action list today, like, take Aaron Coolidge to lunch. So this is topic number one.
All right.
Yeah. The educated guess would be that number you expressed was basically individual sort of invoices and/or AWS accounts, and the number is, that number certainly is scary from a central IT governance point of view, because you've got no visibility into what's happening in probably 978 of those 979 accounts.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've got at the moment two POs and 3 accounts, about to have 2 POs and 4 accounts, because we're now bringing new accounts in underneath I forget the terminology, a billing parent. So
right,
there's slightly different kinds of things to count.
Exactly, and understanding that is going to be key for sort of managing the mess going forward. And as Walter and other central IT departments will feel the pain, because as someone like Greg, is creating this environment that he's creating, and everyone else is creating their own sort of separate environments, at some point in time, those frequently have to get handed off, right? When Greg becomes a Nobel Prize winner and goes off to another school, to
Right.
do his work, and then no one else in his current research unit knows how to deal with this thing, and so then they bring it to Walter and say, hey, we've got this really important thing that has to continue running. And Walter makes an ugly face and tries to back away and can't. So, so that's part of the interest is, and then if you magnify that across UC as a whole, as cross campus efforts and collaborations come up, then how do we work better together between the campuses in these virtual environments, which technically should be much easier, but considering sort of the spread of configurations and the variety of implementation approaches, potentially is actually harder than trying to tie our on-premise infrastructure together. So that'll be, again, an interesting conversation, and not just sort of, as you mentioned, Walter, sort of what moves to the cloud, but what cloud services we're going to support and will allow to be used, at least within particular environments that we're managing. How do we keep an eye on those? How do we make sure that protection level 2 data is only where we think it is? All those kinds of things become a little more of a challenge when someone can just give a personal credit card, as Aaron said, and spin up an account and sort of go to town.
Yep, absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to drilling into the data that Aaron got, as well as going back to our CIO and asking him where he got that number as well.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, let's see if I can call out anyone else. David Scott from UC Davis. Do you have any insight into how how governance and sort of management of cloud environments is handled at your campus?
So I can speak. I work in the Office of Graduate Studies, so I speak from that perspective. Mm-hmm. But I suspect we're largely the same situation as Berkeley is. Just a lot of separate accounts all over campus. Anybody with a PO or who did it through a credit card has an account. And I think right now they're trying to get more central IT oversight over what's going on with it.
All right. Fair enough. Cindy Law, I think you chimed in earlier, and you're from UCSF. What area of UCSF are you in, and what insight do you have into that subject?
Hi, yes. So I work for the Autism Clinic and Autism Genetics Research Lab. I work for the Department of Psychiatry. I'm not from the central IT. Mm-hmm. Our lab, our investigators have open PO account with Amazon Web Services, and they pay using that PO. That's all I know about the finances because I'm a programmer. I don't know what the transaction, how those things were set up or how that works, but I just know that they get paid. And they don't complain, and I have always my access, so that's all I know about money transactions. Mm-hmm. We have the person named Brett Dispenser and another person, Matt Jameson. They belong to AWS, and they have been assigned to us as our representative. Something like that. So whenever we have AWS issues or questions, we always contact Matt and Brad. Mm-hmm. That's how it's been working for us. The way that we have been doing is we have an EC2. We have two different areas going on. We've got a bioinformatics group, and they do their thing, and I do my thing. I'm a database architect, application technical person, and so we've got I2B2 deployed on AWS. Using the EC2 instance with the CentOS server. And then the backend for that is on RDS, which is the database services, Postgres, and then we connect to that. So we've got three items going on our AWS account. We've been trying to get HIPAA compliant for our environment. And we've been working with UCSF IT. We have so many IT different little areas. I'm not sure what the names are, but it's more like IT. There's a UCSF ITS, and then there's UCSF IT or some tech that's the current name. It was before ISU. But anyway, we are trying to work together to have a HIPAA compliant area on AWS that we all can put our PHI data on, and they are working. It's in progress. It hasn't been very streamlined because UCSF, we are new to having a cloud environment being HIPAA compliant. So that's our current challenge. To work with the UCSF IT security, SomTech/ISU and UCSF ITS and along with AWS. Yes, that's what I know. I don't know about other items going to AWS or not. I don't know. I can't speak to that because I'm not from central IT. But all I know is that a number of our systems were migrated from UCSF data center to somewhere in Quincy, Washington.
Right.
So
you're part of the big UC Health data center consolidation effort.
Yes. Right. So I've got items going on at Quincy and then AWS. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I think it's again,
helpful.
Yeah, it's all useful information. Again, I would encourage you to be involved in the security focus group because they're going to be talking about sort of HIPAA and data protection as that conversation goes along. So that may be useful to you and others that you're working with in your environment. And I also have a note to make a long overdue contact back to the sort of IT advisor, I think, for UC Health, who contacted me about a month ago. And so I've got an open suggestion to him to set up a focus group around sort of the UC Health area. It seems like people from across those medical centers should be talking to each other because, again, some of them have actually created HIPAA compliant environments. Some of them are still working on it. Some of them are still thinking about initiating that. So if they can all take similar approaches and make sure that whatever approach they do take will allow collaboration within the med centers, that also seems like a useful conversation to have.
Right. So is that group a separate group from this group? The security focus?
Generally these focus groups are a subset, and so it will be people who are interested in a particular topic. So again, the one that's met was security. There's going to be another one soon about cost, billing, and recharge. Don't remember the other areas off the top of my head, but there will be others as well.
Okay.
And so we will, I think initially, and I'll mention this to Walter and Karen directly, I think initially for these first couple of meetings of those, we should distribute the information about the meetings and the agendas widely on the email list to everyone. Since everyone's not aware of the focus group sign-up sheet, and there could be people that are interested but just haven't made themselves known. So we should broadcast that widely for the first couple meetings until people get in the habit of making sure that they're opting in appropriately.
Great.
And it's easy enough to delete an email if you don't want to see it anymore. It's just one of many.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone representing any other campus or location that has information they'd like to share about, again, governance or how they're managing cloud migrations?
Yeah. Hi, this is Kimberly Bartlow, and I'm at UCSF, and I'm actually in SomTech that Cindy was just mentioning. I'm very new to AWS. I actually just started about a month ago on it. And I've been tasked with coming up with a sort of a account management business process and what that might look like. And there's a lot of options out there. I'm very interested in what other UCs are doing in terms of master accounts. It sounds like Berkeley has has a lot of 998 accounts that have no governance and maybe aren't even linked to a master account. So I'm very interested in that aspect of it. I've also spent a lot of time, I've talked a little to our AWS account rep and on the AWS account management, and the AWS organization strategy sounds great, except that it doesn't appear to work the way that they advertise it works. So, what?
Kimberly, are you involved with the POCs getting approved in that area?
Very loosely. We just
Okay.
started one with the CDHI POC,
Oh,
and that
right,
kicked
right.
off yesterday.
Okay.
So that's the first one I've been part of.
Okay. Because I've been following the POC 1, 2, 3, 4, and your name is new, so I'm so glad you joined this group. Maybe I can follow up with you.
Right. Yeah.
So close, so far away.
Yeah.
And I would say, Kimberly, if you described, looking at, I guess, the organizations, and it didn't, when you dug into it, it didn't seem to work the way you thought it was advertised it would work, which may very well be the case. I don't know, but we found it at moments kind of like that checking in with the Amazon reps, they're usually pretty willing to go to work for us and straighten stuff out. So that's been really helpful at key points for us.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. To I think Cindy was mentioning. I don't know that Brad Dispenza is still the account rep for UC Northern California. He's migrated off, but he is focused, I think, on health. So maybe he's still involved with UCSF. But yeah, they have been.
He just went and did a for all the UCOP, the CIOs or CISOs, excuse me, kind of a security overview. So he is available to get involved in some engagements, but it's not. It's not as easy as it used to be. He's gotten quite a bit busier.
Well, we find we go through the sales rep. For us, it's Matt Jameson. We go through the sales rep, and then he goes and figures out how to get the tech rep, whether it's the current regular one, or someone else is available. So yeah, we kind of start through the sales rep, and then you go to the tech.
Yep, that's exactly correct. So that's the person to start with, the sales rep, and he can bring in resources up to it, including some limited professional services engagements. So if you have, again, if you're struggling with something and it doesn't seem to be working, then I urge you to follow Greg's advice and reach out to AWS and hold their feet to the fire until you get an answer that you like out of them. Also, I guess going back over what you said, so you're in charge of sort of account management. When you talk about account management, basically you're talking about AWS accounts, and you're trying to come up with a rational process for how you're going to create and manage those over time. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I'd love to know what other UCs have done with their best practices, pros and cons of the different approaches.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that's going to be part of the conversation for this group that Carol is a focus group she's spinning up around cost recharge, and billing, because it's all sort of related to that, how you deal with that. So I again urge you to keep your eye open for that and participate when that happens. And what we'll be attempting to do for those focus groups is find the people from the campuses that are currently filling that role and have them participate in the conversation with us. Even if they're outside of sort of the technical realm or the IT realm, they might be within the finance departments or elsewhere within the organization. We're going to try to bring those into the conversation so that we can share that collective information as to what people are doing and what's worked well and what hasn't worked worth a darn. But at least, as you mentioned, so it sounds like you're starting off the right way if you come up with any type of rational approach to that to avoid a Berkeley situation. So whatever you put into place, it's got to be better than nothing.
Well, so far we've identified there's about 33 to 40 that are out there in the wild. So it could move to a Berkeley situation, but it hasn't proliferated that way yet.
Right. But it will.
Hey, Aaron, I think that they're calling Berkeley irrational. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, they're absolutely right.
If the Birkenstock fits, then wear it. All right. Are there any other campuses represented on the call? I haven't heard anyone from Irvine, Riverside, Santa Barbara.
This is David Keeley from Irvine. Mm-hmm. I'm in Central IT, and we've been focusing really on getting the technical plumbing in place to migrate a whole lot of Central IT applications to AWS. So we have a mandate from our CIO to do all that. While our campus website has, when people look at the Central IT website for AWS, they see the option to register under the UC contract, and when they click on the link, that sends a ticket to me. So I see people who request to go under the UC contract from that web page, and then I forward that request and get them under the contract. So I'm aware of, probably a couple a month kind of thing trickling in. I'm sure there are many others who aren't going under the UC contract. We haven't yet prioritized getting a list of those accounts and reaching out to people and coming up with a plan. That's kind of the state we're in right now, is focusing on Central IT's needs for right now. And then once we get our house in order, we definitely have our eyes on proactively offering services and standards to the rest of campus. But we're not nearly to that point yet.
Okay, fair enough. All right, anyone else?
Yeah, this is Aaron at Berkeley. I've got one more item that I haven't heard other people talk about, which is Amazon Workspaces. And I'm curious if anybody else is doing some things with it. Our Educational Technology Services has been using it, and we're exploring on the research side if there are some applications that we might also put in that space. So I'm just curious if anybody's doing anything there.
Aaron, I've personally individually played with it a little bit. I needed some Windows to run something somewhere, and so I fired up a workspace.
So this is Andrew Greaves at UCSD. We're actually exploring workspaces as an option for VDI solution into the clinical data warehouse. So setting up a core set of tools and a reusable format that we can kind of relaunch for researchers and have a select bill that goes out in a recharge fashion. We've been playing with it in Citrix as an option, and then we started using VM Horizon, and we're just kind of doing our full vetting of spaces as well.
Great, that's good to hear, because we've also been doing stuff with our analytics environments on demand platform, and I'll paste the link in there for folks who haven't seen that yet, which is basically VMware and Citrix as well, and thinking about kind of moving back and forth workloads between AWS and that VMware Citrix platform.
Yeah, sounds like we're in a similar boat.
Yeah.
Okay, I hear another focus group, or at least another focus conversation coming on.
I have a quick question, but that's slightly off topic. What sort of visualization tools are you all using at your campuses? Tableau, ClickView, ClickSense, that sort of thing.
I know that UCOP is using Tableau, and they have a couple of Tableau servers set up, and our organization has a handful of Tableau desktop licenses that are being used.
And I think an AWS rep recently mentioned that they even have some competing products for some of these now that are cloud hosted, but I haven't used myself.
Correct. I don't know if Deborah's on. She may be able to chime in. She did look at whatever the heck the AWS product is on that front.
I'm on, Kurt.
Okay.
So we looked at Amazon Quick.
You're very quiet, Deborah.
Also see a lot of internal Amazon that are clearly using QuickSight under the hood. We looked at it to integrate with RDS databases back when it was a preview product. And we didn't go ahead with it because we have Amazon Tableau users. We have Tableau users who are happy with their product. And the license model didn't really fit with the way we use it.
All right. Did you get that, Cindy? So
no, I could only hear very faint. I couldn't hear the other.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have my microphone. So we evaluated. Sorry, we evaluated Amazon QuickSight when it was in preview mode, and it has a lot of very Tableau-like features. It can access native Amazon data sources like RDS databases, data that's in S3 buckets. And so it's very easy to integrate with the Amazon environment. We ended up not purchasing it, and it's a per seat license, which that model doesn't fit very well with the way we anticipated using a product like that. But it's a nice product. It's definitely a competing product, and it's worth taking a look at if those are your needs.
I didn't catch what product. What's the name of the product?
The name of the product is QuickSight.
Oh, QuickSight. I haven't heard of that one. So QUICK.
SIGHT.
Okay.
And I can find a link and paste it in the chat.
Oh, yes. That would be great. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
And we looked at that, keep in mind, we looked at that like a year ago, Deborah?
We looked at it actually 2 years ago. It was announced quite prematurely at AWS reInvent 2 years ago, and we spent several months trying to get signed up for the preview and finally got access. But it's been a product now for a while.
Right. And like everything else AWS related, I'm sure it's changed, pretty significantly over the last, since we did an evaluation. So you definitely want to look at the current version of applications when you're making your decisions.
Post a talk that was done by Ben Schneider here at UCSD. It was a big data immersion day, and they kind of went full sail into some of their visualization tools outside of just QuickSight, but it's a pretty comprehensive talk.
Okay, appreciate that, Andrew. All right, anyone else have data visualization stories to share?
On the topic of QuickSight, did any of you that used it kind of look into the security aspects of it, like how the encryption is? Can you put like FERPA data in it, things like that?
I can tell you that we didn't because we don't have those kinds of requirements at CDL.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that takes us, we've got about 5 minutes left. If someone out there has one last question or topic of conversation.
I have one thing sort of out of the blue. Maybe it's more for the security group, but we're looking at deploying a whole bunch of stuff with our stakeholder Caltrans, and they like it, the notion of it all in a very private VPC on RFC 1918 addresses, of their own, through a direct connect. But some of what we need to do, the way our architecture works, is we have to talk to some Amazon APIs, and some of them it varies. Well, but for example, even just take the EC2 API, that is only reachable on a public IP address, and so that means at some subnets it needs to have some NAT access out to what is, of course, the public internet to get to the EC2 API, but it doesn't really leave Amazon land, right? And so it doesn't go meandering around the world, and I'm just wondering what folks think about that. Has that, if people encounter that situation and say, hey, we wanted everything off the internet, but off sort of public space, but we need this pathway. I mean, I realize we don't have a lot of time left on the call at this point, but does that kind of ring a bell with something that someone has encountered before, and what did they sort of do or think about it?
Well, I can chime in and say I think it's ridiculous. I mean, the internet connects everything to everything these days, and so I don't actually agree with that approach. Nonetheless, if that's a requirement to meet, then you got to find the technical solution. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I don't think it's actually an issue. We have there are other things. We have we're going to have more than 500 IoT devices scattered across many square miles of LA, right? That are probably bigger concerns, right? And okay, it just right. Thanks. Exactly. I think if I got that personally, if I got that request or that requirement, my response would be a carefully crafted explanation that it's not the public internet per se, or the private network that gives you the security. It's all the various components and layers of your, within your application, et cetera. And I would just demonstrate, hey, for this particular thing, we have encrypted connections, and for this, we have data encrypted at rest and in transit, and here we're controlling access via this way.
Routes and access control and all that kind of stuff.
Right, and so that that sort of this concept that you can build a moat around it, and now I'm safe is so last millennium, and doesn't apply very well in a cloud environment. And oh, by the way, even if you were able to implement that, you're sort of what do you call
defeating
it?
the purpose of using the cloud.
Yeah, you're straight-jacketing yourself and preventing yourself from getting the agility and the capabilities that a cloud platform provides.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep. And if you need people to weigh in on sort of that argument, you can refer to Andrew and myself as cloud security experts, and we'd be happy to write a testimonial for you.
Awesome, thank you.
And we can get Brad to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's we don't see this as one of our biggest hurdles, but it's something that we're going to have to kind of address a bit as we go. So. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a little education, on that front probably goes a long way.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, and that said, we're just about out of time, so I'm going to take the last minute to thank everyone who participated. We got up to a whopping 15 people this month. Hopefully in 4 weeks, if we hold that meeting, we'll get above 20. Thank you for taking the time, for sharing information. Again, I urge everyone to maximize your use of the email list, the Slack channel, and your AWS account reps as needed, and also the people that are on this call that might have information that they'd be more than happy to share with you. So that said, have a good afternoon, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. See you, everyone.
All right, and I guess, Aaron, I'll leave it to you to stop the recording, and then we'll have a new challenge to figure out how we make these recordings available.
Yeah, so I've got all the other videos uploaded to YouTube now, and I'm curating the last little bits, and we'll get a process so each one of these is available in the future immediately. So.
Excellent, and I have a long overdue task to reach out to Sushant Prasad, who volunteered to set up the website. So as soon as we have that available, then he'll be able to link over to it, and everything will be good.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Kurt.
Thank you much, Aaron. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Bye.